why are most residents still using the old tax regime to pay their income tax or direct tax, despite the government of India having introduced the new tax regime in the year 2020 only? And if the old tax regime was working very effectively, then why did government of India has introduced new tax regime? And it is not only about the income tax or direct tax paid by individuals, but even corporates, companies are also more inclined toward the old tax regime, which was the only taxation system before the year 1986. Because in the year 1986, the then government had introduced something called minimum alternative tax for corporate. And after introducing the MAT, the companies, the corporate are still preferring the older tax regime, which was the only taxation system for the corporate world, and that is the corporate tax. So what are the reasons behind it that the individuals and the corporate are also more inclined toward the older taxation system? Is there any loopholes in the current tax regime or in the taxation system which have been introducing by the government nowadays? Currently, if you want to pay your income tax, then you will get two options. The first one is older tax regime, which is going on since the Income Tax Act of 1961, and the second is the new tax regime, which was introduced in the Union Budget of 2020-21. And after doing some amendment in the new tax regime, it was launched as a default option. Means during your tax payment, if you will not select old tax regime manually, then the system will automatically pay your income tax as per the new tax regime. Now you may see on the screen that the old tax regime are having higher slab rate as compared to the new tax regime, and the compliance are also very complex in the old tax regime. Means the method of paying taxes is very complex in the old tax regime, but still the people are choosing the older tax regime. The people are preferring the older tax regime to pay their income tax or direct tax. So what are the reasons? So the reason is simple. The reason is older tax regime offers too many exemptions and deductions. From investment till donation, old tax regime offers as much exemptions and deduction that it can save you up to 8 lakh rupees if your earning and investment planning is good. And if we talk about the new tax regime, then most of the exemptions and deductions have been eliminated from the new tax regime. You will see only few kinds of exemptions and deduction in new tax regime. The first one is a standard deduction of 75,000, which may vary over the financial year. The second one is the rebate up to 12 lakh. Means if your taxable income is up to 12 lakh, then you don't have to pay any tax over it. Even cess and surcharge will become zero. And the third one can be the EPF and NPS related contribution. So these are the measures, exemptions and deductions which have been provided in the new tax regime. Whereas old tax regime have so much exemptions and deductions. Like if you have borrowed loans like home loans and education loans, then you can claim exemptions and deductions over it. And if you have invested somewhere like life insurance premium, then you can claim exemptions over it. And if you have donated your some amount of money anywhere, then you can also claim that some amount of exemptions and deduction over that donation also. And you may also claim over EPF, PPF, ELSS mutual fund, 5-year tax saving FDs, NPS, NSC, house rent allowance, leave travel allowance. So you can claim too much exemptions and deductions in the older tax regime. Some survey says that the people who earn 7.5 lakh to 15 lakh or even more than that annually, then they are more inclined toward the older tax regime. Means they are preferring the older tax regime more frequently than the new tax regime. So what are the reasons that most of the corporates are still preferring the old tax regime than the minimum alternative tax? So let us discuss about it. So in 1980s, there was a company called Reliance Company, and still this company is working. But at that point of time, this company was headed by Honorable Dhirubhai Ambani, sir. And at that point of time, means in 1980s, the corporate tax was very high, like 30% was the corporate tax. So what he did, he hired best chartered accountant from all over the countries, and he said to them that claim all the incentives, claim all the exemptions and deductions which have been provided by government. And by claiming it, either shows the company profit is zero or the company is in loss. So obviously, if you will show your profit as zero, then you have to pay tax on that zero profit. So obviously your tax liability will go down. And this is not an illegal, this is legal. And this thing was done by almost all the companies during that time. And this thing was known by the government at that point of time. So that's why government have came up with the new tax system, and that is the minimum alternate tax system. So before the introduction of minimum alternate tax system, the companies had to calculate a net profit, and net profit was calculated in this manner that at one side you have to calculate the revenue part, and other side you have to calculate expenditure part. And after calculating it, you have to calculate the net profit, and on the net profit you have to pay tax. But after the introduction of MAT in 1986, government said you have to calculate the net profit in the same manner, but you will have to add certain expenditure in the net profit. And obviously, if you will add certain expenditure in your net profit, then obviously the net profit will increase and your tax liability will also increase. and this is how the government wanted to increase the net profit, and they wanted to take out the maximum revenue. They wanted to earn the maximum revenue from the corporate tax by introducing the minimum alternative tax. But also government said that you have to calculate both the net profit and book profit, and whichever would be the higher, you have to pay that. But the most of the corporates currently, they are choosing the corporate tax in spite of the minimum alternative tax. And why they are choosing this, I will tell you in the next video. So thank you for watching this video. See you in the next video. Take care.